the required safety items on your boat? Do you need to wear a life jacket when you're on a kayak? The North Dakota Game and Fish Department has regulations in place to keep you and others safe while enjoying our state's lakes and rivers. But do you know the rules? From watercraft to paddleboards and everything in between, KX News is about to take a deep dive into water safety. Ship shape and safe. A KX Town Hall starts now. Here are your hosts, Lauren Davis and Taylor Rawson.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for our latest KX Town Hall.
Summer's officially here, and many of you have already hit the water. Thousands of people in our state have already jumped on a boat, jet ski, or kayak. It's a favorite activity in North Dakota.
And that's what we're going to focus on today's Town Hall, to keep you and your loved ones safe on all kinds of watercrafts. But first, let's meet our panelists.
Jackie Lundstrom is the Enforcement Operations Supervisor for Game and Fish.
Dustin Melby is a sales representative for Moritz Sport and Marine.
And finally, Andre Pagan. He is the owner and operator for Missouri Kayak Adventures for those of you who love to paddle locally. Thanks to you all for being here.
This town hall is about safety on all watercrafts in our state. How would each of you describe water safety in a few words? Andre, let's start with you.
Knowing the conditions before you paddle out.
And Jackie?
Carrying the appropriate safety equipment with you.
And being familiar with your watercraft.
Sure.
So Jackie, what are some watercrafts in our state, and what are some of the biggest boats in our waters?
So we have a plethora of different sizes and styles of boats in North Dakota, from the human-powered, from the kayaks, paddleboards, jet skis, fishing boats, pontoons, all the way up to some larger houseboats and sailboats that are up on Lake Sakakawea.
And Dustin, you probably already know this, but what's the most popular boat or watercraft that people tend to buy around here?
So around here, it's definitely the pontoon. The pontoon works great for the river and our shallow water access, the beaching it on the sandbars, and just being able to get full families out there. But across the state, it's probably going to be the fishing boat, for sure.
So Jackie, what is the difference between lakes and rivers in terms of safety?
It has to do with the water flow mainly, because with the Missouri River, for example, out here around Bismarck, there is quite a strong current, whereas a lake typically doesn't have much, if at all, a current, and is more driven by wind action and that. So the way you operate your boat can be very different on a lake than on the river.
And Andre, is that kind of the same with kayaks as well? Does weather kind of have something to do with how safe you can stay on the water?
Yes, especially on the Missouri River, where it is a moving body of water. You always have a lot of respect there. And especially when you get winds from the south or any type of extreme winds like we get in North Dakota, you have to be careful before paddling out in those type of conditions.
And what do you tell your customers before they paddle on to the water with their kayaks?
So usually with my customers, I'll go through the river and kind of where they're headed and give them a rundown on the routes and stuff like that.
Are kayaks allowed to paddle in all parts of the river, or are there lanes on the water for boats and kayaks to follow? Jackie?
So there really is no structure like a highway would have. It's kind of, share the roadway, just like on the highways and in the streets. So it's an avenue for everybody to use of all sizes.
And then what are the most common mistakes that people tend to make on boats or kayaks?
Mistakes that get them into accidents, they would be, mainly not paying attention, having an improper lookout, being distracted by their phone. I've seen distraction by their pets in the boat. In general, talking when they should be driving. Pretty similar to on the highway.
And would you say the same as well, Dustin? What are some common mistakes that you see?
Yeah, a lot of common mistakes are just not being familiar with the watercraft and maybe understanding batteries or how much fuel you're going to have for that day and how much you're actually using, and maybe getting yourself caught up into a scenario there. So just really knowing that watercraft inside and out, and that's something that we provide at Moritz. When you do purchase a boat, we do walk you all the way through the watercraft, and we want that for you. We want you to be able to know that inside and out so you can have a great experience on the water.
Great. And what kind of accidents happen on the boat, would you say, Jackie?
A lot of them can be either hit structures under the water that you don't see. We have a lot of what we call dead heads, dead trees underneath the water level. When it comes to maybe not knowing the rules of the road on the water, we get a lot of interaction that way, kind of T-bone type of incidents where the one boat doesn't know that they need to be the give-way boat, where it's kind of like the right-of-way person on the right has the right-of-way in most circumstances.
Okay, what about you, Andre? What would you say are the most common accidents that you see happen with kayaks?
On kayaks, the thing I'm most afraid of is pontooners, especially that weekend crowd. Can get a little rowdy sometimes and get a little bit too close to our paddlers. And when that happens, they can throw heavy wakes into the kayaks, and that's never fun for anybody.
All right. Well, thank you so much. There's so much more to come on this KX News Town Hall. Stay with us.
To find you the best rate. You need life insurance. You don't need to overpay for it.
Call 1-800-528-1717 or go to selectquote.com now and get the insurance your family needs.
At a price you can afford. Select Quote. We shop. You save.
Welcome back to our KX Town Hall. Ship, shape, and safe. We are talking all things water safety to help you stay safe on all kinds of watercrafts this summer. So when it comes to safety supplies, what do you definitely need on your watercraft?
First and foremost, absolutely, you have to have a wearable life jacket on board for everybody. That includes even the little infant that you might have in your baby carrier. They too have to have a life jacket on. And yes, they do make infant life jackets. They kind of look like a little pea pod by the time they get all zipped up in it, but it is a safety concern. So it's important that everybody have a wearable on board, and it's important that they actually fit the individual on board, because you do not want to put a 7-year-old in an adult life jacket. And one of the rules in how we explain a lot of times to kids and parents that don't know what size to get is that if you put the life jacket on your child and you buckle it up and you can have their arms go up and you can pull it off of them, the life jacket is too big and they need a different size. Most life jackets, all life jackets have to be Coast Guard approved. There are some that are not, that are out there on the market. So it's important to make sure you're actually reading the labels before you purchase that life jacket. All of them have a label inside or on the back, and so it's important to make sure you're reading those. We have some different styles here today, just to show the different types that are available. A lot of times, and Dustin may be able to help with this, is that a lot of boaters will get a packet of these beautiful orange ones. Now, we all know nobody really wants to wear an orange life jacket, right, in this style. However, you know, in these days and age, we're really pushing for life jacket wear across the board, no matter if you're in a kayak, canoe, pontoon or a big houseboat, safety is our #1 concern. So we encourage, you know, to get a more comfortable, wearable type life jacket than the old cheapies that everybody buys just to have them on the boat.
Yeah, they both have their place, exactly like that. So obviously these are great for storing in the boat, and it's going to do the job too and take care of you in an event. But if you are going to do a lot of activities and you're going to be in the water and you're going to be pulled in a tube, or you're going to be in the boat at high speed or doing watercraft, PWC type stuff, you definitely want, you know, something like this, and I believe you have to, correct?
Right, you have to.
So, but yeah, those are great for
And
that.
I wanted to add a little something on these life jackets. If there's any experience like kayakers out there watching, you'll know that they also make life jackets that have a little cutout here in the back. So when you're sitting down in the boat, in the kayak, it'll be a little bit more comfortable for paddling. So if you want to pick up one of those for your kayak, go ahead.
I'll just continue to expand on that. We have life jackets as well for riding a jet ski, riding a Sea-Doo, skiing behind the boat, and just like he's saying, that have a different cut to it to make it a lot more comfortable for you in doing those activities and to fit all riders and sizes. So, and we have all those things available at the store to fit whatever event, activity you're into. So.
Now, we have been seeing a huge increase of paddleboarders around, and so paddleboards do have to have a life jacket on board. Every state's rules are a little different, but North Dakota does require a life jacket. A lot of them will have the mesh in the front, and same on some of the kayaks have a compartment to wear. But on the paddleboards, we're seeing an increase of what these are called kind of like a hip pack type. And this is an inflatable. This is a manual inflatable one, as an example. There's several different models, but this particular style of life jacket actually has to be worn to be considered a life jacket. So it's not like if you would have one of these guys strapped to your paddleboard. This one does have to be worn. You have to read the manufacturer's instructions. Now, for our officers and a lot of fishermen lately, they've been going with a more suspender type inflatable. This one is an automatic that when we hit the water, it will expand on its own. But this one, again, you have to read the label on the back. It will tell you if it has to be worn to be considered a life jacket on your boat, or if it is considered a life jacket if you just had it stowed. So it's very important that those labels are read.
Okay, and other than life jackets, what are some other safety items, maybe Dustin, you could tell me, that required on a boat?
Fire extinguisher, that's always a big one. And then, of course, the PFD, the throwable. What else am I missing, Jackie?
16 foot and over need to have a whistle on board. And that's just, you know, if something happens and your boat dies and you need to call for help, you're not yelling. You're using that whistle that has a different pitch that is easier to hear down the way. In regard to the fire extinguishers, it's important that you make sure every season that fire extinguisher is in good working order. If it doesn't have a gauge, you need to check the bottom of that. If it has a stamped number on the bottom, if it's outside of 10 years, it does need to be replaced. Otherwise, check those gauges and make sure that it's current in that green line.
Just to touch on the boat side of it too, you know, some important things are to have a set of jumper cables, maybe a marine band radio, or cell phone if you're in service. You know, those are always great things to have in there too. Sunblock, some of the easy stuff that we forget. But those are...
We also encourage, we also encourage having a first aid kit on board. A lot of times, you know, you're jumping off the boat, maybe you slide across something metal, or the kids are running around and inadvertently somebody did have a glass bottle out on the sandbar when they're not supposed to. Just little things like that where you may need that little bit of extra prep. We always encourage lots of water on the boat, or any type of boat that you have. You just never know when you're going to get out there and it's a little bit warmer, maybe you exerted yourself a little bit more than you thought, and you just need that beverage for hydration.
So when it comes to boating, water skiing is popular, tying a tube to a boat, lily pads, etc. What do you need to remember before you pull someone on a boat?
Give yourself some space. Try to find a place, you know, that is going to allow you to do that activity safely. Get away from the traffic. Multiple people involved. We need a driver, obviously. We need a spotter. and then somebody that's going to be on the tube and having fun. What else?
Right. It's important to remember, especially if you're out here on the river between Bismarck and Mandan. It's nice to be able to pull tubers and skiers, but there are narrow corridors of the river that you just really should not be pulling anybody through. The traffic is just too congested, and the sandbars could pop up underneath there at any time as well. It truly is a real safety concern through here.
So what are some accidents that can happen while behind the boat, and is there like a specific kind of rope that a person needs to use?
There are ropes for skiing, for wakeboarding, for tubes that are specific lengths that help you enjoy that activity more. It depends on how far away you are from the boat and what type of wake you're going to be traveling in. And then, of course, for the for the tube, having a rope that's rated for that. A tube creates a lot more drag than a skier does, so making sure that those things are rated for that activity, along with the pylon on the back of the boat, too. Just making sure that we're using it for the correct thing.
All right, well, that's good to know. Now I'm going to take you on the water and show you why these safety lessons are important. Lauren and I met up with Andre Pagan, owner and operator of Missouri Kayak Adventures, to kayak and go out for a ride on a pontoon.
So Taylor and I are kayaking for the first time, and we're learning how to be safe.
Andre brought up some important tips for kayaking.
If you're on a tandem kayak, pick the right partner. Find somebody that can paddle for you so you can do the relaxing. You guys are in a 14.5-foot tandem kayak, and these are 12-foot kayaks, 12-foot single kayaks that I'm using.
Plan a trip with your capabilities. If you are a beginner, stick with a small lake or a place with little to no currents.
You're killing me. You're killing me.
It's not easy, is it? Always check the weather. Wear a life jacket and do not go alone.
Another question is like, what should I bring to go kayaking? I get that a lot. So definitely say bring something to drink. Bottle of water is always nice to have. So I grew up on the Missouri River. My parents lived out in Hogue Island here, and my dad bought me a kayak when I was young.
We also went on Andre's pontoon, which Lauren drove for a little bit on the Missouri River. If you are a beginner boater like Lauren, make sure someone who is experienced is on the boat with you, like Andre.
Andre Robin.
Make sure there is a life jacket available for everyone on board. Make sure you know the depth of the water and where potentially low areas and sandbars are.
It's summertime, and here in North Dakota, everybody wants to have fun. But it's important to know how to stay safe when you're out on the water.
Similar to kayaks, make sure you know the weather and plan a trip within your capabilities. For beginners, maybe try smoother lakes at first before hitting the river. And also take a safety boating course. North Dakota Game and Fish
Join us under the stars on Saturday, August 27th for good times, good friends, and great music. Rock the night away with Tracy Lawrence's mix of honky-tonk and American country. Doors open at 7 and the show starts at 8. Tickets are just $35. Tracy Lawrence, live at Sky Dancer Casino and Resort.
Welcome back. We have been speaking about the do's and don'ts of being out on the water. We have covered what to do while being out on the boats or on the kayak or paddle boards. And now we're going to go into how to behave and what you should be doing while having your summer fun.
So when it comes to drinking and operating boats, what are the rules around that?
So North Dakota does allow the driver and operator to have an open container in the boat. There's no regulation that can't happen. However, just like on the roadway, you have to have a sober driver to operate your boat. It's always good to have a float plan and decide prior to going out who is actually going to be the designated driver coming home.
Okay, and so Andre, does that kind of go hand in hand too with kayaks as well?
To be honest, I don't know exactly the rules on what it is drinking and kayaking. I definitely am fine with it as long as you don't overdo it, but I'm sure Jackie's more apt to answer that question.
Yeah, so the boating under the influence law does cover all watercraft and vessels, so that does include human-powered vessels. So again, you can have an open container on your kayak or paddleboard, but you can't be under the influence of at the time you're operating.
Okay, so do you need like a certain blood alcohol concentration level to power a boat like a car?
So yes, there is a threshold, just like your motor vehicle. On the river, we're still at a 0.10, where driving a vehicle has a 0.08.
So the Missouri River is always eroding and changing water levels. What dangers can come with that?
Beaching a boat is probably the most common on the river, and understanding kind of how the sandbars are always moving. I always explain it like a snowbank, and everybody can see that, how it's constantly growing and deleting itself. The river kind of does the same thing. The main channel seems to be there year after year, but how wide it is or how skinny the actual main channel is and how far down those sandbars move is always something that is evolving and changing with heavy rains or outflows of the dam, and something to definitely be aware of.
Okay, and how bad are the debris and sandbars in our state, both in our rivers and our lakes?
So are you talking debris more for like wood products or human left debris?
Probably more of human left debris, I would say. Yeah.
So, you know, like a lot of areas, that's kind of time and human dependent. You know, we have a large group of people around the Bismarck-Mandan area that are pretty efficient at packing in, packing out, and then we have a group that just seems to always leave their stuff behind. And it's tough for our officers to be able to go around and kind of mark everybody that's out there. When you have 300 people on a sandbar, who do you make responsible for the sandbar? Where that has to be everybody that's out there. Even if your neighbor left their stuff, it should be picked up at some point before everybody's left the island.
I agree.
Does Game and Fish monitor the low areas of rivers and lakes to warn boaters?
So we don't necessarily monitor for warding purposes, but obviously we monitor for more so for ramp access for our fishermen, our kayakers, for everybody to get in and out of the water. So it's unrealistic to think that Game and Fish could go out and mark every deadhead on the river, or they could go mark every sandbar up on Lake Sakakawea. That's where it's important that when you go out onto the body of water, no matter if you've been out there 100 times, that you take it slow. You know, it's changing constantly. It can change within an hour in some cases, depending on the water flow coming out of the dam up at Lake Sakakawea.
Okay, and are there certain boats that monitor the depth of our waters? Dustin, maybe you know this?
Well, boats, a lot of them have a depth finder on them now, so you can monitor the depth immediately, right, what's underneath you. If you don't, we sell them, and we can install them on your boat too to help you with depth. There's also great cartography out there too, great map chips that you can put in the depth finder to help you, at least give you some base of where the shoreline was or is, where those islands are, and take away a lot of danger areas for you fast.
All right, good to know.
So Dustin, for beginner boaters, can they go on the river, or is there an easier body of water they should try first?
Well, a lake is definitely easier to navigate right away, but the river is can be intimidating, and we do hear that a lot, but it's really not. It's a pretty forgiving river. It's mostly sand-based, so you really can't hurt too much out there. And there's a lot of very experienced boaters around here, you know, in your neighborhoods, and people you can talk to, or people that are willing to, you can follow them up and down the river and get into a safe spot. But I'd encourage everybody, yeah, go for it, get it out there.
I get the question a lot from people out of state, is there rapids? As if there would be like whitewater on the Missouri River, and what I tell them is no, it's actually a really mellow, easy river to float down.
So would you say the same for kayakers starting out on the river?
Yeah, it's pretty easy, as long as you do understand it's a moving body of water. With that, always carries its certain level of risk, but for the most part, it's pretty safe.
What about a lake? Is that all right?
A lake, of course, yeah. Especially if you're just starting brand new to paddling, get out on a lake, figure out how to turn, how to go forward, how to go backwards, and then get out on the river.
All right, and Dustin, what safety features should you be looking for when looking to buy a boat?
Well, one of the big ones right now in our fishing boats is foam filled. And so these boats are so buoyant, they actually have cutout pictures of them with big holes in the boat, and the boat still floats. So very nice features. Foam filled, bilge pumps, adequate lighting, they all have that. And lots of room to be able to do whatever activities you want to do.
Okay. And for each of you, what is the most important thing about water safety that people should know in just a few words? Starting with you, Andre.
Again, know the conditions. Like, check the weather, see if it's super windy that day. Because if it's going to be super windy, you might take on water in that kayak. Also, where are you going? If it's Saturday at like 1 p.m., you're going to find a lot of like pontoon traffic, especially down by the bridge area and down south in the Bismarck area. So be aware of that before you paddle out.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for talking with us today, and thank you all for joining us for this week's Town Hall.
We'll see you later tonight for KX News at 9 and 10.